What's up, people? This is DET Aquarium, and today we're going to be starting a brand new series on how to keep and breed shrimp successfully. Now, these are my experiences, my personal opinions, so please take it with a grain of salt, but I want to share with you what has worked for me in setting up all my shrimp tanks. Now, this is going to be a 5-part series, and today we're going to be going over setup. So you guys stay tuned. Let's go ahead and get into it. Before starting out with anything, what you really need to do at first is start with a plan. You need to map out exactly what you want to do. You need to figure out what species of shrimp that you want to keep. The two most broad categories is Neocaridina and Caridina. Now the Neocaridina is your red cherry shrimp, blue velvet shrimp, carbon roller shrimp. The list goes quite on, but they like to have the more harder water or water above 7.0 pH. And that's going to make your setup a little more easier because you're not going to have to look for those ideal substrates or additives to make sure your pH is at a lower state. The Caridina is your crystal red shrimp, your crystal black shrimp, your Taiwan bee shrimp. Your harder to keep shrimp generally are going to need to have softer water or pH in the range of 5.5 to 6.5, somewhere in there. But once you map out your plan, then you can kind of figure out what you need to do next. Once you have your plan mapped out, now you can really think about what size aquarium, what lighting or filtration, what kind of hardware do you really need to keep and breed these shrimp successfully. In my experience, I like to keep aquariums between the ranges of 10 and 20 gallons to keep shrimp, and one reason is because I like to see my shrimp pretty regularly. Now with a larger aquarium, you're going to see them a little more seldom until they start breeding regularly, or if you buy a large stock up front. Secondly, it's a little more cost effective to get your 10 or 20 gallon ready or prepped to start keeping and breeding shrimp opposed to a 75 gallon or 125 gallon aquarium. But if I were to pick one size, I would say or recommend these 17.1 gallon aquariums right in front of you. I think they're the perfect size. They give you a little wiggle room in the event that you were to make a mistake, and I think they're large enough to get you a pretty decent sized colony once they start breeding all the time. Now I want to talk about substrate and substrate additives. At this point, you already know if you're going to keep Neocaridina or Caridina shrimp. With Caridina shrimp, you really need to be a little more picky with what you're choosing because they require softer water. You need to have a pH of 5.5 to 6.5 or so, so you're going to want to choose something like 88 Amazonia that's going to try to keep that pH down in that range. The Neocaridina species, you could pick inert substrate, you could use gravel, you can use the same 88 Amazonia. They're not quite as picky as the Caridina species, thus they're a little easier to keep because they require a little bit harder water between like 7 to 7.8 or so. You'll be okay. The substrate additives I'm going to review with you briefly are the additives that I like to use prior to even pouring in the substrate. So these are the initial phases of even setting up your shrimp tank. Now these two here, I don't use them simultaneously, I use one or the other, but I use a bacterial product, and this is to really jumpstart your beneficial bacteria so you can go ahead and get your cycle going, you can go ahead and get your biofilm starting to generate more quickly. And this next product is mironecton powder. Now, I think I pronounced that okay, but it's a mineral powder that you pour, and it kind of gives your shrimp the trace elements and minerals and nutrients needed to help them molt at the beginning stages. The last products I like to sprinkle on the bottom are your beta G or beta glucan. Now, I have two different types here. Again, I don't use these simultaneously, I use one or the other, but these are for your overall health or immune system of your shrimp. This is just a little bit of a bonus, I guess you can say. You don't have to have it, but it's to really ensure the livelihood of your shrimp. The next thing you want to think about is what type of filtration do you want to have on your shrimp tank. Now, I like to have the most beneficial bacteria that I could possibly have. So on all of my shrimp tanks, I have canister filters because they have a lot of biomedia that they can hold within them. Now, I know that may not be plausible for everybody just because canister filters, I know, are not cheap. But if you want to have a secondary or alternative, I would highly recommend sponge filters because they do the same thing. They have a nice area surface where they're going to produce some nice biofilm for you. They're going to have some beneficial bacteria. As long as you don't take it out completely ever and clean it completely off, if that's your only method of filtering your water. The last piece of equipment that I want to review with you when setting up your shrimp tank is lighting. And this is by far the easiest part of setting up a shrimp tank, period. And that's because lighting isn't as important as everything else is, because they're not finicky. They don't care what kind of lighting you have on there. They would prefer it to be dimmer than brighter. But I like to use Archaea LEDs on all of my shrimp tanks. They grow my moss carpets exactly how I need them to, and any other kind of plants that I decide to throw in there as well. That's just my recommendation. Again, you can pick any lighting you would like. It's going to be primarily on what kind of plants you want to keep in your shrimp tank. That's it for this episode on how to keep and breed shrimp successfully. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, I have 4 more coming out. Please let me know what you think. I appreciate all your support as always, and you guys have a great week ahead.